And he joined happily right on the spot as a member because he already knows and believes exactly what we believe and is happy to be a part of this and happy to share the message that the Birch Society has been teaching for so very long. I invite you at the end here, please do take, many of our materials are free. The only thing that I'm asking for payment for is a constitutional course, and you can come up and see me. But I also want you to just sign up for attending a constitutional solution workshop, and we'll find somebody who will host it, but just sign up for it so that you can follow the Constitution. Jordan is a pastor from eastern Montana, and an excellent patriot, and when I talked about people with backbone, you're going to hear it. This is a man with backbone, a very courageous man that we all need to learn from, and he's going to talk a lot, or I should say he lives it, and he's a true inspiration on how we should be acting and dealing with what's going on right now. It's my pleasure to introduce Pastor Jordan Hall.
The first time I heard of John Birch was in a lyric in a Charlie Daniels song, if you remember that. So I thought, well, if it's good enough for Charlie Daniels, it must be good enough for me. But it has been a pleasure to get to know Leah and the John Birch Society. Primarily, I'm here, though, because I am a pastor. That's what most people call me, Pastor Hall. Or if they don't know me as Pastor Hall, they know me as Jordan or JD. And mostly I'm here because I'm a pastor who doesn't always know exactly when I'm supposed to be quiet. And most of the time, that's hardly never. And so I want to explain that to you a little bit tonight and try to encourage you in what you are doing here in Ravalli County and Hamilton and what you're doing with Teresa Manzella. And I want to talk a little bit tonight about Teresa Manzella as well. I have a few things to say about her. Yeah, they're all good things, mostly. Good things. Long before people knew me as the guy that runs the Montana Daily Gazette, the publisher, by the way. Have you heard of the Montana Daily Gazette? Most of you. I hope that you appreciate the work that we do. They knew me as what is called a polemicist. Polemicist, if you look up the term polemics in the dictionaries, refers to someone who argues. And I invented the term polemicist. Actually, I didn't invent it. Let me take that back. I took it from the church father Irenaeus. He used the term to describe what he did, and most people know it by its other term, which is called discernment. Telling the difference between right and wrong, or as the Prince of Preachers, Charles Spurgeon, would call it, that knowing the difference between right and almost right.
Yeah.
That's what discernment is. And so in 2008, I came to Montana to be a pastor, and I could have moved anywhere in the world that I wanted to go. My parents worked their 20 years as civil servants, my mother for the state, my father for the federal government. And as soon as we graduated, they went off to the lake to fish for the rest of their life. It's not really your hometown without your family there anymore. And my wife's daddy had died in a sawmiller accident. It's not really hometown without your daddy there. So we had to decide where we wanted to go. And we didn't want to go east of the Mississippi because I figured that if there was ever a zombie apocalypse of some kind, they were all toast. I'm not a big fan of people, so I thought, then that's weird for a pastor to say, I know. But I thought, I want to move to the Rocky Mountain West, but I don't want to just move anywhere. And so we looked county by county for one of the most conservative counties in Montana. And I found it about as far away from here as you can get.
Yeah. And still be in
we
Montana.
wanted to move to the mountains. We missed them by 5 hours. So we moved to Sidney, Montana. And I've since had 3 children born in Montana. I like to say, this is my rule, if you survive 3 Montana winters, you ought to be considered native. Like, we got to draw the line somewhere. Here's my point. This is my home. I've got nowhere else to go. Amen. This is my line in the sand. In eastern Montana, we can't get people to organize. We can't get this many people to show up for any event. Because we do not feel pressed upon like you do here. We don't have Black Lives Matter. We don't have Antifa. We don't have the LGBTQ mafia. We don't have those various groups, the environmentalists, the anti-gun groups. We don't have that in eastern Montana. We're just as conservative as you are in eastern Montana. But the problem is we haven't yet figured out it's time to fight back. We have to fight back. And so that's what I want to talk about just real briefly. So you can understand what I mean when I say I'm a pastor. It doesn't always know when to be quiet. I fly about 18 to 24 times a year just because I speak at different places and travel a lot. A couple years ago, I was going through the Billings airport, and security says, "Sir, we're going to have to pat down your groin because we detect in our machine that there's something there." And I turn around and I look at the machine, and sure enough, there's a yellow block on the machine right in my groin. And I'm like, yeah, there's something there, but it's nothing that shouldn't be there. And he said, well, what we're going to do is I've got to put my hands into your pants and feel around. And I said, did you say inside my pants? And he said, don't worry, I'm going to use the back side of my hand because it's less sensitive that way, apparently. And so I say, you're not putting your hands down my pants. I'm a grown man. You already made me feel emasculated by taking off my boots and my belt. That's a psyop, by the way, that you said was a temporary measure 20 years ago in 2001. You already make me feel vulnerable. Now you want me to let you touch my groin. And he says, well, would you like to be patted down in a private area? And I said, well, you're already offering to pat me down in a private area. But if you're going to molest me in public, in front of everyone. So he calls his supervisor over. And he says, we're going to have to do this. This is the law. I said, that's not a law. That's your made-up rule. And so it ends by me telling him, now keep in mind, I have never missed a day of church in my entire life. Ever. I was a pastor when I was 17. I haven't been in a lot of trouble. I have a clean driving record. I'm a nonviolent man. But I said, if you put your hands in my pants, I'm going to punch you in the face as hard as I possibly can. And he said, I'm going to call a law enforcement officer and tell him you threatened to punch me. And I said, I am going to call a law enforcement officer and tell him you threatened to put your hands down my pants. And he said, you can go. Not long after that, I'm going through TSA again, and sure enough, it shows that I have something in my groin. Surprise, surprise. And again, it's basically the same conversation. Now, I was in a little bit of a rush that day. I didn't want to get into it with them over and over again about this same issue. Plus, I'm pretty sure it puts me higher up on the harassment list. But I pulled this Constitution out of my pocket, and I turned to the Fourth Amendment, which I had highlighted at the time. And I've gone through so many of these. This is not the one. These have just deteriorated in my pocket over the years. But it says, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. Do you have such a warrant to pat me down like that? No, but this is a private business. I said, no, this is what the 1964 Civil Rights Act calls a place of public accommodation. By the way, the Constitution applies here. Then he tried to argue, well, that says Congress shall make no law. And then I had to explain, that's because only Congress makes laws.
Article 1, Section 1.
I had this line in the sermon on Sunday because we had the COVID mandate from Joe Biden. You're welcome. I caught myself. I think some of you don't know what we're laughing about. And about 3/4 of my church works across the state line in North Dakota, where we weren't lucky enough to have HB 702 that protects us against vaccine discrimination. And the other half work for companies that have more than 100 people. So the question is, what do we do? Where do we draw the line? So the scripture says, pass through the flock that is among you. And so I pointed out, legislators make laws. Dictates come from dictators. And Joe Biden is a dictator.
Yes.
I had one person who very politely said, I don't like that you got political in your sermon. And here's the thing. I'm going to talk about politics a little bit tonight. All right. But before I do that, let me be extra clear. The problem is not politics, and the solution is not politics. The problem is always sin, and the answer is always Jesus. Amen. Back to the TSA. A few weeks later, I was in the airport, and I was wearing my shirt that says Fauci Live, which I bought specifically for the airport. And a TSA agent came up to me past the gate. I'd already made it through security, and he says, you don't look very happy about wearing that mask. And I said, what are you, the face police, Paul Blart? Now, I probably shouldn't have called him Paul Blart, like he's a mall cop, but it's literally, do they pay you to walk around and look for scowls on people's faces? Is it your job? So let me get this right. Not only do I have to wear a COVID burqa, I have to be happy about it? Listen, it's not about changing your behavior. It's about changing the way you think. It's Orwellian. That's why we fought so hard. That's why Teresa fought so hard against big tech censorship. They're not trying to change the way we talk. They're trying to change the way that we think. So then, September 11th, a few days ago, I'm flying again through the Billings airport. And again, they detect something in my groin, and they say that we're gonna have to pat down your groin. And I said to them, okay, go ahead and molest me. That's what you're paid for. He immediately called his supervisor, who explained the pat-down procedure. Now, it wasn't inside the pants this time, thankfully. I was in a hurry to catch a plane. Fill me up, pervert. You took the job. So I say, go ahead, molest me. They call the supervisor over, who explains the procedure, and I say, I understand the procedure. I'm not stupid. I get the procedure. Molest me. So they called a law enforcement officer. And I said, officer, I've already consented twice. I'm now consenting to you a third time. What is their problem? He said, I don't know. Let me find out. He came back and he says, they don't want you to use the word molest.
Oh,
So,
too bad for them.
they won't pat you down until you stop calling it molesting. I said, problem solved. They wanted to control my words. By the way, that's what you call it when you touch me in my no-no spot that my parents told me not to let people touch. And I stood back with the officer and I said, watch this. Woman goes through, the device doesn't show anything. Man goes through, it shows it has something in his groin. Woman goes through, nothing. Man goes through, it shows it has something in his groin. They're feeling up every man that goes through the airport. Why is that?
To emasculate them.
That's right, to emasculate men.
Humiliate.
I will not be one of them. I refuse it. So why am I even here? Back to not being able to shut up, apparently. So I came to Montana to be a pastor. And I'm looking at scriptures. For example, Matthew chapter 8, verse 2, or rather verse 15. Chapter 7, verse 15. Jesus says that there are those who come in sheep's clothing, but are inwardly ravenous wolves. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. And the book of Jude, we're warned about those who sneak in privily. 2 Peter gives a similar warning. 1 John says many antichrists have already gone out into the world. So here I am, I'm a pastor, and I'm doing pastor type things, right? Like I'm baptizing new believers, and I'm trying to be an evangelist and to share Christ with people who don't know him yet. And I'm marrying people that need to be married. I'm burying people that need to be buried. And in my office, reading my Bible, I see all of these commands about people who claim to be Christians, but are not actually Christians. They sneak in privily. They sneak in subversively to, quote, lead captive weak women. To lead them out. Subversiveness. And I began to see a little bit of this in my denomination. People claiming to be conservatives that are not that conservative. So I put together a website, a blog. I didn't think it would turn into a big deal. Next thing I know, it became the third largest Christian news site in the world.
Woohoo!
Yeah. And basically, I just talked about what was wrong with Christianity, not what was right with it. Because denominational press outlets like to do what I call pump sunshine. They just tell you everything good going on in the Southern Baptist Convention, but they don't tell you that all 6 seminaries have been taken over by critical race theory. They don't tell you that the liberals just won the Southern Baptist Convention and the conservative resurgence lost. There might be a Southern Baptist in the room who fought through the conservative resurgence and remember what it was like. It's gone now. Say goodbye to it. So I began to say these things and see these things. I preached a sermon in 2012 at a Reformation Montana conference. People started playing it all over the country. They care about my blog. But I'm focused mostly on wolves in sheep's clothing. They look like us, they talk like us, but they ain't us. They're subversive. Okay, let me fast forward a little bit. I'm sitting in a town hall meeting for political candidates. I'm there just because I live in the community. I'm a pastor. I might as well show up to such things. And I listened to a woman give her stump speech to run for HD 35 as a Republican in the Republican primary. Her dad, her name, by the way, is Tammy Christensen. Her dad's name was Walt McNutt. Walt McNutt spent, 20, 30 years in Helena, going back and forth between the term limits, between the House and the Senate, here, there, and everywhere. Walt McNutt, who helped to found the Solutions Caucus, big-time liberal. I knew none of that at the time. All I know was I'm sitting there as a pastor listening to this woman talk. She's telling us why we should vote for her as a Republican in the Republican primary and says that she's pro-choice. I look around the room. Did I hear that right? I asked the guy next to me, did I hear that right? She said she was pro-choice. And then I began to look around the room thinking, who's going to say something? Who's going to say something? Someone say something. For the love of God, somebody say something. So I think to myself, this is my line in the sand. This is where I chose to live. We will have a pro-choice Republican in Richland County over my dead body. So that's when I got involved in politics. And we went after her, and we went after her hard. But she was the heir apparent. She was the longtime incumbent's daughter. She can't be beaten. She was undefeatable. And we went after her on guns. We went after her on the unborn. I don't know. We probably went after her on her makeup application. I don't know. But if there was a weak point, we wrote letters to the editor. We knocked doors. I said, I will not have a pro-choice candidate in my district, period. Now, at that point, some of my best friends and strongest political supporters came to me and said, Jordan, you're going too hard after her. She's going to get a sympathy vote that you're too mean to her. I said, we'll see what happens. Let's see how this plays out. This is interesting. Election night rolls around. She loses in the biggest landslide in Richland County history. Because when you fight to win. That's the only way to fight, and that is to win. Well, I became at that point the vice chair and eventually the chair of the Republican Party, because I don't want that to happen again. A bunch of dang rhinos took over the Richland County Republican Central Committee. So at the same time I'm fighting this woman, I'm signing up conservative precinct captains. We took it over. And then the chairman had to run off and serve as the representative. His name is Scott Stephenson, because the representative that defeated the woman previously, David Halverson, died while he was in office. So we had to select a new candidate. That made me the chair of the Republican Party. Listen, our meetings are on Monday night, and that's when I do jail Bible study. I would rather be in jail Bible study than a Republican Central Committee meeting. I'm much more appreciated there in jail than I am at a Republican meeting. I don't want to be there. And then Mitt Romney ran for president. And I thought, if that's what conservatism is, rather, if that's what republicanism is, I don't really care to have anything to do with that. So I left the Republican Party. I just said, I don't need this. And I just stopped going to their meetings. A guy visited church not long after that. I took him out to eat. And I told my wife later, I said, there's something funny about that guy. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but I think he's a snake in the grass. She said, what do you mean? I said, I think he's a Democrat. Now, I have 5 children. The oldest name is Reagan, named after the president, of course. And she said, Democrat? I thought he was a Christian. Which I thought was a great response. Well, the next thing I know, now keep in mind, I'm not involved in politics at all. He is now, I Googled the kid. He's about my age. And I find out that he started the College Democrats at Liberty University and had to threaten to sue Liberty University to found the College Democrats. Then he moved to Sidney, Montana, became an attorney, and immediately began to run for office. Here's the problem in Montana. You probably don't have that problem here as much as we have out there. But the problem is the Democrats don't just disappear, they become Republicans. That's what happened in Teresa's senatorial race last time around. Democrats in the Republican Party. And so now I see a little bit of correspondence here between wolves in sheep's clothing and Democrats in the Republican Party.
Amen.
I'm seeing a little bit of correspondence. So I began to pay attention to this a little bit more closely. And by the time I even found out Joe Crowder was running and found a candidate to oppose him, it was too late. We have open primaries in Montana, unfortunately, and about 300 Democrats crossed over to vote for Joel. And our candidate, a lady in our church, she lost by 130 votes. Joe Crowder came to Helena. He got a 64% rating in party loyalty. I won't tell you what Derek Skees said of him last night because it's not appropriate for a preacher to say, but it wasn't positive. You can ask Teresa Menzel her opinion of Joel Crowder, maybe after the event, but I'm assuming I would get a thumbs down and not a thumbs up. He worked with Democrats as much as he worked with Republicans. Well, we lost to him, but behind the scenes, I was also working to take back over the Republican precincts in the Republican Central Committee. Now, in Richland County, the rule generally has been whoever's first to the courthouse gets to sign up as a precinct person. That's been the rule. Unspoken. So I take my church members that live all over the county in different precincts, and I have them go sign up. Now who has control of the central committee?
Woohoo!
All right. And now who kicks Joel Crowder out? Now, by the way, he's never been back to a Republican Central Committee meeting. He's never been back to a Lincoln-Reagan Day dinner because he's a Democrat.
Might have been the billboard you put up.
That's why. Great billboard. That was Matt Regier and Annie Bukacek.
Oh, okay.
So thank God for them. And Matthew Montfortin that won that against the COPP. May God curse their soul. So, not Annie Bukacek, but the COPP. You should end them next time, Teresa. Let's do something about that. So, we saw them coming this last time. Or rather, they saw us coming. We eventually ran against Joel Crowder when it came time. 2 years rolled around. But they knew we took over the precincts, and they were coming for us, and they primaried every single one of us with Walt McNutt's bunch, the Rhinos, the Lou Jones bunch, the Ed Buttrey's bunch, Solutions Caucus, the Conservative Solutions Caucus, the Reasonable Republicans Caucus. They change names every few years, so you can't figure out who they are. They primaried us all. I don't like to lose. So I dropped thousands of dollars into a PAC that I created to fight precinct fights. These are like the lowest on the totem pole of politics. But I'm not going to lose. They primaried every single candidate except for me. Apparently they thought that I wouldn't, I would fight back, but the rest wouldn't. We fought back on behalf of all of our candidates. We send out mailers. We knocked on doors, and we called them Democrats in Republicans' clothing. They're only there to take over our party. And we won. We held them at bay. But we gave some questionnaires out. We sent them to the mail through the mail because I wanted to be able to say that when we endorse a candidate, it's based on a questionnaire. Where do you stand on the Constitution? Where do you stand on gun rights? Where do you stand on abortion? And I got one back from former Representative Walt McNutt. Had a note attached to it. The note said, quote, "Who the hell do you think you are?" When he lost his precinct race against Representative Lear's father, I ordered him a pink tiara from Amazon that said "Happy Retirement." And I sent it to him and asked him, "Do you know who I am now?" Now, the myth is, if you're a pastor, you shouldn't talk about politics, see? You can't talk about that. Even though Acts chapter 17, Paul commends himself by saying, "Did we not hold back from preaching to you the full counsel of God's word?" All of it. But we're told that we're not supposed to talk about such things. So Walt McNutt wrote a letter to the paper, letter to the editor, and he says, "Jordan Hall needs to spend more time and attention pastoring his church." I sent a letter directly to Walt, not to the paper. It said, "Dear Walt, FYI, I ordinarily do not take the advice of foul-mouthed drunks who only go to church for funerals. Yours truly, Jordan Hall." Gets better. He sends it to the local newspaper, the Sydney Herald, and they publish it. So then it's not me slandering him. He slandered himself. And everyone knows he's a foul-mouthed drunk who only goes to church for funerals. So they all thought it was great. Now, when we were trying to defeat Crowder, I'm trying to get Eastern Montanans to understand that these little blue dots, Missoula, Helena, Bozeman, these are going to control our life from 600, 700, 800 miles away if we don't get this under control. We got to stop them here. When somebody says, "Are you for a border wall?" I'm like, absolutely. Can we put it somewhere, I don't know, around Livingston? Or around Missoula, maybe. Yeah. All right? But the political component of this is that there is an intersection between religion and politics that a pastor is not even allowed to ignore.
Right.
The sixth commandment says, thou shalt not murder.
There
That
you
includes
go.
abortion.
Yeah.
The seventh commandment says, thou shalt not commit adultery. And Jesus, in Matthew chapter 5, defined that as any type of sexual activity outside the bounds of a marriage between a man and a woman. That includes your gay pride marches. By the way, one patriot group told me not to talk about gay pride, so that's all I talked about. Not, by the way, let me stop though. That's when the John Birch Society invited me to speak instead, so they did not censor me.
Yay.
The eighth commandment says, thou shalt not steal. Socialism is theft.
Absolutely.
God is a capitalist. Thou shalt not steal presupposes the right to private property ownership. Ninth commandment, thou shalt not bear false witness. That one got me in trouble lately. I can't say things that aren't true. Let me come back to the ninth commandment. The 10th commandment says you're not even permitted to want your neighbor's stuff. Be satisfied with what God gave you. In other words, it forbids class warfare. Now, what I have just described for you is the platform of the Democratic Party. A point-by-point refutation of God's law. But do not ever think to yourself that Democrats are irreligious or godless. They're not. They have a God. It is the state. They're statists. That's why they're so frustrated that the vaccines aren't working. That's why they're so frustrated that it was so slow coming out. That's why they're so frustrated at Anthony Fauci. They're so frustrated we can't stop this with masks because they look to a government to do everything, including cure the common cold. It's their God. Their God provides their medicine. Their God provides their food. Their God provides their housing. That's their God, and they are statists. And so this is not a battle between the religious and irreligious. This is a battle between religions. Those who hold to this book and those who hold to a different book. Like maybe Anti-Racism by Ibram Kendi, or maybe Critical Race Theory by by Kimberly Crenshaw, or Richard Delgado, or the Frankfurt School, Marxists, or Karl Marx himself. They also have their own holy books. Do you know why they get so upset about anti-abortion laws? It's because that is their communion. It would be like telling me I can't take communion on Sunday. You want to see a fit? When Governor Bullock said that we couldn't go to church, and we had a lockdown start at noon, 12:01. My daughter and I hopped in her Jeep, drove to the church, and turned on every single light to send the message that when the world goes dark, the church ought to light up. Yeah. Did we close down? No, not for a single Sunday. We have a God who raises the dead, heals the sick. Jesus healed people by his spit. You want a religious exemption? The scripture says that our bodies are temples.
Yes.
What that means is the church has no ecclesiastical authority over the state. And as I have screamed my head off to pastors who've closed down, and I mince no words. You know how I say things I shouldn't say? 93% of churches closed down, and they're cowards.
Amen.
Amen.
Cowards.
Amen.
Romans 13 says, submit to the governing authorities. The word authorities in Greek is exousia. Exousia means jurisdiction. Government has a jurisdiction. I got pulled over 2 Sundays ago outside of the city limits. The officer says, do you know why I pulled you over? No. He said, you swerved over the yellow line. I said, okay. Why did you pull me over? I thought, it's like who's on first, what's on second? He's like, why are you asking me that? You're a city cop. I'm an accountant. Why did you pull me over? I won't give you a warning. I said, you can't give me a warning. You're not in the right jurisdiction. The First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. You have no right, little tyrant, to tell Jesus when he can and cannot be worshipped.
That's right.
None. I haven't started preaching yet. I'll get done quick. 1 Samuel chapter 17. Listen, when you're a kid in church, you identify with the figures, the Bible figures that you have presented to you. Now, Phil Vischer of VeggieTales, in case you didn't know, is a woke leftist Marxist commie. Get that crap out of your house if you have a chance. But when you read VeggieTales, watch VeggieTales, it always makes it moralistic. Who are you in the story? Stephen Furtick does that when he preaches. Who's the Goliath in your life? Don't read the Bible that way. The 66 books of the Bible are all designed to point to one man who is Jesus Christ. Okay? So I identify with different characters in the Bible. I identified with Elijah because he was he did some pretty awesome stuff. His whole showdown on Mount Carmel was pretty neat. And I identified with Peter because he whacked that guy's ear off even though he shouldn't have. Sounds like something I would do. As I grew in my faith, I identified with Barabbas because I was the guilty one that they let go to crucify Christ. But that's not really good theology per se. You shouldn't read yourself into the text that way. I'd be happy with being an inanimate object. Here's what I mean by that. So let me give some background. God is clearing out the promised land, which was called Canaan, of the Canaanites. Think of it as Israel's manifest destiny. All right. It didn't matter whose native land it was. It mattered who did God give that land to. So God drew national sovereign borders, and he said this belongs to Israel. And one of the groups of Canaanites were Philistines, and they were big old boys. Goliath was 9 foot 9 inches tall. David's brothers were on the front lines, but not fighting. David's dad, Jesse, sent David with some cheese and some food and some provisions to his brothers to keep them fed. He shows up, and he sees Goliath mocking God. Mocking God. And David asks the question. He says in verse 30, or rather, he says to him let's begin in verse 29. David said, "What have I done now? Was it not but a word?" He turned away from him toward another and spoke in the same way, and the people answered as before. What he ended up saying made some people really mad. And what he said was, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine who challenges the armies of the living God?" And his brothers were mad at that because they're like, "You're not even in the army, you armchair quarterback. What are you going to do about it?" Goliath is there calling out the whole army, and they're just standing there. And when you read the scripture, you become familiar with the spirit who inspired it, because men penned it, but God inspired it. Amen? God is God's book. And you get to know the spirit who inspired it. Spirit in Greek is pneuma. All right? So capital P, pneuma. All right? But there are certain times where a character in the Bible will say something, and you know exactly what that guy means. You can feel what he's feeling when he says it. Paul's that way a lot in the Pauline epistles. When David says, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine?" I know the spirit that he's feeling. When a Jew from David's era calls someone an uncircumcised Philistine, he is calling him a filthy, disgusting, disease-ridden, probably venereal disease-ridden, nasty beast. And what's interesting is, David did not ask the question, who is this giant who is making a mockery of the army of God? The giant part did not register in David's head. It was absolutely irrelevant to him how big Goliath was. The only thing that was relevant is that he was challenging the armies of the living God. That was the only thing relevant to him. Now, going back to the 9th commandment and what gets me in trouble, I was coming back from Helena with a crew of Eastern Montanans heading back from the GOP convention. I go in to buy a pop and a bag of Doritos because my body's a temple, as you can tell. And there's a cross-dressing man at the counter as the clerk. I don't use the term transgender, and neither should you, because no one in the history of mankind has ever transitioned their gender. They've emasculated themselves, but they've not changed their gender. So if Bruce Jenner cuts something off and they find his blood at a crime scene, they'll put out an APB on a man, because our gender is on a chromosomal level. And things like, transgender, quote-unquote, transgender athlete bills. Men, no matter what, have twice the lung capacity of women. Which means it will always be unfair no matter how much estrogen that dude takes, right? We're different besides just our genitalia. I don't know why I have to explain this in 2021, but apparently, the sex ed class that we grew up with failed us terribly. I wasn't going to say anything to that cross-dressing man, except he had a pin on that was blue and pink striped. Last time I checked, that was the pro-life colors. So I asked him, as I'm handing him cash, he's handing me my Mountain Dew and chips, he's putting it in a bag. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't scream, didn't shout. I said, what does your pin mean? He says it stands for transgender pride. And I said, well, you're not a woman. God made you a man. And you should repent of your sins. Believe in Jesus. Have a great day. And I took my bag and left. I thought it was over at that point, but apparently some rhinoceros-sized lesbian standing in line behind me heard the ordeal, came outside to accost me, told me Jesus said I was going to hell. Said, judge not's in the 10 Commandments. And I'm like, no, it ain't. She says, what are you, some kind of Bible scholar? I'm like, a little bit. But what I kept asking the rhino lesbian woman was, what's your problem with objective reality and scientific fact? That is a man. That's a man. I just said what was true. I would say sue me, but that stopped being funny a while back. Because they will. So I'm waiting for my wife to finish pumping gas. She's in a different vehicle. I'm waiting for the other Richland Countyites to finish their tasks in the store, their patronizing store. I can't leave right now, or I would have left right away. But I gotta wait. I'm not gonna leave my caravan behind, especially in a cesspool like East Helena. So they call the police and want to report. I overheard the conversation. I want to report someone for a hate crime of transphobia. Well, great, because now if I stay around and they tell me to leave, I'm trespassing. But if I leave, it's going to make it look like I did something wrong. So I left, and I called the police department in East Helena, who is so on the ball, the answering machine answered. And I told them my name, my address, where I was going, how they could find me, and I gave them the name of my attorney in case they needed someone to explain to them the First Amendment. I got a letter in the mail a few weeks later from Town Pump banning me from every Town Pump location inside the state of Montana. You know, if you took the slot machines from all the Town Pumps in Montana, they'd outnumber the slot machines in Las Vegas.
Wow.
Did you know they got their start by the coal fund with a 1.8% loan, while other businesses were paying 8% for business loans? Did you know that the state of Montana gave them $600,000 last year? Probably because the army of DPHHS, that's where they go to buy fuel. I had conservatives attack me for that. Well, that wasn't the proper time and place. He wasn't there to be preached at. Some of you here might say, that's a little much, you know, to ruin the guy's day, telling him he's a dude. Let me say this as emphatically as I can say it. Am I running out of time? Can I go a little bit longer?
Yes.
Let me say this as emphatically as I can say it. I do not care what you think, and I do not work for you. I care what he thinks. The way I saw it is, I had 30 seconds in that man's life before I would never see him again. Everyone else, customer after customer after customer, bears false witness against him and against the God who made them. Jesus said, it is God who makes them both male and female, God creates them. He repeated himself twice. Jesus doesn't need to repeat himself, but he did. Jesus said it twice. I'm not going to bear false. I'm not going to lie about God. I'm not going to lie about another man. Now, conservatives said this is private property. They kick you off if they like. My response is there is a 1964 Civil Rights Act, whether you like it or not. They can't kick me out for my religious comment any quicker than they can kick me out for being black or Hispanic or disabled or for my nation of origin or for being disabled. They have violated my constitutional rights. And when you fight me, I will fight you back. So I'm going after some. By the way, they're the 10th largest donor to Democrats in the state, just so that you know. So we gave them 20 days to either apologize and undo it, or I'm going to have my friends who are legislators propose a bill that's already been written, actually, that prohibits state tax dollars from going to businesses that limit the free speech of their patrons. Because even though they're private property, they are a place of what is called public accommodation. Teresa, you don't mind that bill, do you?
No.
No, I think she's for it. Furthermore, I'm going to call for a boycott. That one's going to be harder because I already know that some of the biggest trucking companies in Montana have already gone in to cancel their accounts, at least to the tune of $3.6 million. They're not even waiting for me to call for a boycott. They're like, we have lots of places to buy gas. All right? So they have 20 days before I take them to federal court. We're going to fight. What the woman kept saying to me, the rhino lesbian, was, I don't know how else to describe her, the giant homosexual woman. What she kept saying to me was, he has a right to be gay. He has a right to be gay. He has a right to be gay. And I kept saying, I don't know that he's gay at all. He might be perfectly straight and just wearing dresses. I don't know. You're assuming things. I'm not saying he doesn't have a right. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say you have a right to be as weird as you want to be in America. And I have a right to call you weird. We have to defend our rights. Well, Ninth Commandment again got me into trouble. You see, we have a policy at the Montana Daily Gazette to not refer to the term transgender without scare quotes because it doesn't exist. You can have butch women and emasculated men, but you can't have men that become women or women that become men. So when you see headlines in every other state publication that says the legislature, Senator Manzella, whoever, passes bill, votes for bill prohibiting transgender women from playing women's sports, we run the headline, the legislature passes bill preventing boys from playing in girls' sports. The word is a lie. It's a lie. So we ran an article entitled, "Who is the Gothic Transvestite Haunting the Halls of the Montana Capitol?" All right. Let me back up just a bit. Just a tiny bit. As we were going after Joel Crowder, trying to get him out of office, I realized we needed to galvanize Eastern Montana. I'm going back in time. Hold on. I'll come back, I promise. So we held a town hall that broke all records. It was standing room only along the sides and the walls in the back. As the Republican Central Committee, we demanded that our Republican officials show up. Some of them got mad and said, "We don't like being told what to do." And I said, "You're a public servant and a Republican should show up to a Republican meeting when we tell you to." So it didn't start on necessarily the best foot. But the meeting went great. And it was a meeting to call for our commissioners to declare through petitions signed by the people, using the First Amendment, that our county be declared a sanctuary for gun rights and a sanctuary for the unborn.
Amen.
Right? So maybe we can coalesce around this. Now that Joe Crowder sucker was not there, of course. He was at a different event with the wrong party. Now, the first woman to speak up in favor of the bill was a Native American woman, and we had indigenous people in the room. And we had black people in the room. And in Sydney, that's saying something, because we have like 3 black people, and they were all in the room, so it was like 100% black people showed up to the meeting. And they're all Republicans, by the way. And we had Hispanic people in the room, but we had the Sydney Herald sitting over here. Local newspaper owned out of state, like most local newspapers are. And when she got, by the way, we invited, like I said, the officials, local officials, including the county sheriff. Right? The article that was printed January 29, 2020 was entitled "A Christian Controversy," Christian in scare quotes. I'm talking about me. And said it looked as though a militia was forming. You ever notice liberals are scared all the time? That's scary. Scary. I don't know how you live your life so scared all the time. But they're scared. It looked like a militia was forming. Attorney General Austin Knudsen, before he was Attorney General, he was present. He took a wide panoramic view of the audience. The article in the newspaper said that it was a crowd of mostly old white men. Mm-hmm. First of all, what's wrong with that? You ageist bigot. Okay? You're the bigot if you don't like old people. Secondly, it was not mostly men in the room, it was mostly women. Learn to count. So she attacked me. You don't have to take my skeletons out of the closet. You can just pull them off the clothesline. They're there for you to see. She came after me. That was her swan song. She then retired and resigned from the paper. Right after she took away my religion column that I've been writing for 10 years so I can tell people about Jesus. Mm. So I thought to myself, I can do better than that crap that they call journalism at the Sydney Herald. I've been doing Christian publishing for 10 years. And then I look around, what's in Montana for news? Well, there's the Bozeman Chronicle, and that's owned by Adams Publishing. There's the Great Falls paper that ran a hit piece on me last week. There's the Billings Gazette that's owned by Lee Enterprises. There's the Missoulian, the Missoula Current. What's in Hamilton? What do you got here?
River Valley Republic.
Yeah, okay. I
Lee
seem to
Enterprises.
recall. Okay. So I told Ed Butcher, if you know Ed Butcher and Lonnie Bergstrom, friends of mine, I said, I'm going to start a newspaper, and we're going to cover politics. And here's my prediction. Within 2 months, we're going to have more readership than every other publication in the state, except for the Billings Gazette. They're the big boys. Within 6 months, we're going to have more readership online than the Billings Gazette. And within 1 year, we're going to have more readership than all other newspapers in the state combined. And I said that because I'm an epistemological capitalist. I made up the term. I like making up words sometimes. Epistemology I didn't make up. Epistemology means the study of truth. Capitalism, I guess I didn't make up the term, the words at all. I just put them together. The capitalism, foundationally is built upon the law of supply and demand, that where there is low supply, there's high demand. So I'm looking around saying, where is there conservative news in Montana? You can find some on the radio. I was on Aaron Flint's program the other day. But where is it online? There's Don Pogreba, the Helena Tommy, over at the Montana Post, who's been a thorn in the side of Republicans for 12 years. There's that guy. So I said, supply and demand says this is going to go off. This is going to be a big winner. And so I started the paper just as a way to attack Joe Crowder. And then I was introduced at the GOP winter kickoff to a woman by the name of Teresa Manzella. And within 5 minutes of knowing Teresa, I knew that I could trust Teresa.
Yeah.
And then I began to research Nancy Balance. One of these things is not like the other. Then I learned about other races and other characters. This Lou Jones, Boba Fett character, or Jabba the Hutt, rather. Who does he? Why is he running things? He's like a little cockroach running errands in the shadows of the Capitol. And Ed Buttrey, and the Solutions Caucus nonsense. What is this crap in our state? Joe Crowder was just the beginning of it. So then I thought, I'm going to make this a statewide thing, and I'm going to help good candidates get elected, and I'm going to do my best to keep bad candidates out of office. And I left the Democrats alone and mostly just picked on the rhinos. One exception. That Don Pogreba sucker at the Montana Post. I went after time after time after time. I saw him do a caricature. He paid somebody to do a caricature of Senator Manzella. Well, I did one back. Right? So he fled Montana, closed down his blog, and said he was tired of having to explain to his students that he was not a communist. You're welcome. I don't want a badge for that. Big picture stuff. Don Pogreba, I eat men like him for breakfast. I'm going after the Bozeman Chronicle. I'm going after the Billings Gazette. I'm going after the Helena Independent Record. I'm going after the Flathead Beacon, which is a garbage publication, by the way. I'm going after the Daily Interlake, which is even worse. I'm going after all of it. By the way, we just now took over KHDN AM radio 1230 AM out of Hardin, and is now running Salem Radio Network. Larry Elder, Turning Point, Charlie Kirk, Dan Bongino, and our own Montana Gazette Radio. There are 4 more stations working with us for us to take over. We're going to the AM radio, taking over the airwaves. So, the Gothic transvestite. He decided to sue me for $250,000. And for libel. Dude's a dude. Not a big deal. I got an attorney. I pay him a few $1,000. This will be tossed out of court in no time. So I thought.
Yeah.
He went and got an attorney. You might have heard his name. Raph Graybill. The former chief legal counsel for Governor Steve Bullock, the former attorney general opponent of Austin Knudsen.
Yeah, they're gonna try to make it.
A along with a law firm called the Upper Seven Law Firm that is run by the former deputy legal counsel for Steve Bullock, who works right under Graybill, and her partner, both of whom clerked at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. You might have heard of it.
Yeah.
Now, why are they coming after little old Jordan Hall? It's because they know that we are the conservative media in Montana, and they want to keep us so busy or put us out of business that we can't keep conservatism conservative and Montanans, Montana. They're trying to harass us. So everyone who's suing us, I'm suing them back. It's called breach of process. It means you're abusing the legal system to attack a member of the press.
Yes.
By the way, I think it's a little bit funny that Raph Graybill has to come to Richland County to sue me, considering he lost statewide by 16%. He lost Richland County by 83%. So let the guy in the high heels come to the Richland County courtroom with a jury of my peers, and let's go all the way. Now here's what this did. The Bible says you have not because you ask not. I'm asking you for something tonight. It's not a surprise. That hat right there, you might see. What this means is, instead of paying my attorney a few $1,000s to get rid of this cross-dresser from harassing me, I have to spend about $50,000 to keep Raph Graybill from harassing me. $10 to $20 at a time isn't going to do it. They're trying to bankrupt me. They're trying to bankrupt Gideon Knox Group, which is the publishing group for the Montana Daily Gazette. They're trying to shut down our radio. They're trying to shut down our television, our newspaper. By the way, you'll see an article that we put on your desk. This is just one example. Muckraking campaign against Senator Manzella falls short on facts, long on fiction. We took an article from Dawn Pogreba attacking her, and then also it skewered the Convention of States, which is what Leah was talking about, and why it's a bad idea when we think our election was stolen to start talking about a new constitution when our old one is just fine. This is the type of work that we will do that you will not see anywhere else in the state. There is low supply for what we do.
Yes.
There's high demand. This isn't about keeping our newspaper in business. This is about keeping Montana, Montana. I have 5 children. I have a wife I've been married to for 20 years. She's my college sweetheart. I have Reagan Rose, named after the president. Judah Oliver, who's named after Judah, the tribe that Jesus came from. Oliver, who's named after my hero, Oliver North, who protected Reagan, and we remind him regularly it's his job to protect his sister. I have Piper Grace. Augustin Knox, we call him Gus. We named him that after, Gus from Lonesome Dove. I'm Montanan, I told you that. And we have had Hattie Adele. I'm fighting this battle so my children don't have to.
Amen. Amen.
That's why. Does politics cross into religion?
Right.
Jesus said of his cousin John, known as the Baptist, that there was no greater man ever born by natural conception, by natural birth, than John the Baptist, who spoke truth to power, who called out King Herod, and they took off his head. He was a preacher who talked about politics, and they took his head. So I have 3 words for those who don't like preachers getting involved in politics. Come get it.
Amen, brother.
Make me stop. Down here at the front, you're going to see flyers that I laid out for you. They are in sequential order. If you take one, you need to take all of them. They lead to one another, all right? I don't know why the printer did that. It makes no sense to me either. Let's just roll with it. You take one, and then go down the row and take all of them. Matter of fact, I have them here. This one tells you what we're about. The Gideon Knox Group, well, the first three tell you what we're about. We don't just do the Montana Daily Gazette. We do other stuff too. We help candidates get elected. We help with media. We run over 20 news websites, alternative news. These are all the ways that you can support us. There's Giving Fuel, Patreon, The Insurgency. I have a news team of about 20 people that scour thousands of news articles a day. They pick the ones that they think are most likely to be banned on Facebook and Google, and they send these links, 50 of them every day, directly to your email so that they stop censoring us. By the way, the fourth day we tried this with MailChimp.
Yeah.
They banned us, and we had to use a Chinese company to be able to email Americans because they were censoring our news. So you can sign up for the Insurgency. It's free, unless you choose the paid version. Choose the paid version. That way I make money, all right? But this last one is the most important one right here. I know that it's small. But my congregation voted 2 weeks ago to start what is called the Religious Liberty Fund. Why? Because when I found out that he got Graybill, and this was going to cost me $50,000, I sent a letter to my email supporters. I got them all over the world. I raised $10,000 in a day. I raised another $10,000 over the course of the next week. And Chase Bank said, we're not giving you your money because you're a bigot, because you called a man a man. Okay. So what we're doing is we're asking that people to give directly to our church, 501c3, so that it's tax deductible. To write out on the information line, Religious Liberty Fund, and then we're going to use that only to fight for religious liberty for when people like me get sued. I also have, these are some scan codes. If you know how to use those on your phone, you can find out different ways to support us there. Check out Montana Daily Gazette. I've got one more thing to give you here before I'm done off of my phone. If you have a pen or pencil, please grab it, because I have something to give you. A phone number. The phone number is 406-747-2231. If you text that number any amount of money, it will send it directly to that Religious Liberty Fund. Yep. 406-747-2231, in case you didn't bring your checkbook. Let me add this. I don't need your money, and God doesn't need your money. I just want to throw that out there. But you got to spend your money on something, don't you? It might as well be something you believe in. So let me make a promise to you. I believe in Montana. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in Teresa Menzel. But most of all, I believe in Jesus, who died on the cross for our sins, was buried, and rose again from the dead. And you can take that hat as an appeal for money. You go right ahead, because that's exactly what it is. But if you don't hear anything else I have to say, hear this. We are justified by God's grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone, due to no good deeds of our own, but only by the merit achieved for us by Christ, in which God's wrath was satisfied by taking it out on his own Son. So what I do not do so that I can become right with God or earn eternal brownie points. I do not do it to become saved, but because I already am. Amen. I do not do it to earn God's favor, but I do it because Jesus has already earned God's favor. I guess that's all I've got to say. Sherry, make them. Go pop some tires or something. We're not keeping here all night, I promise. And you got to ask your question, get it out quick, and don't be bashful. And I want Teresa up here too to answer some questions if possible. Raise your hand, I'll call on you, and one of us will answer your question if you got a question. Yes. The check would be payable to Fellowship Baptist Church on the information line Religious Liberty Fund. If you say, I'd like to send a check, but you were dumb enough not to put your address where it can be mailed, the address is 2181 West Holly Street, Sidney, Montana, or you can Google it, and you'll find us. Right, Religious Liberty Fund. And by the way, I don't mean this in any insulting way. I think I got $1,400 the last 2 nights, which I'm not quite sure covers my gas on the way here. I don't. $10, $5 is great, but I need someone who God has appointed to step up and say, here's $20,000, here's $30,000. Go get Raph Graybill. Oh, I forgot this part. Let me add this real quick. In eastern Montana, we have this tradition where when you kill a coyote, you throw it over the fence. Do you have that here? No? Okay. I don't know if it works. It's coyote psychology. It's like, don't come here. We'll kill you and throw it over the fence. We also have a tradition that I'm sure you have, and that is when you have a trophy mount, like a European mount, you kill a nice deer, you got a place, right, where you hang those in your house. And I'm a hunter. That's the only time usually I come over here is to kill something. And I've got my 5x5s, my 6x6s, and I've got a 6x7, and I've got a 7x8. I'm proud of that. I got a 6x7 with the velvet still on. I'm proud of that because I had to get that real early on in bow season to be able to get it with the velvet. And the other night, I took Raph Graybill's name and I taped it to the wall. He's next. I could use your help with that. And if you're watching on the video, it's a metaphor. All right? Deal with it. Next question. Maybe. It's possible. It's probably a metaphor.
Probably.
Yes, sir.
For all you know.
Who is the leadership? Can you tell us that's pushing back against the?
Okay, so came home from the symposium and immediately contacted the president of the Senate. And he is a very, very hard worker. There's no doubt about it. Unfortunately, we played a little bit of phone tag, and it's called slow walking, you know, basically, is what, when you kind of drag your feet. No, I don't think we should do that. No.
I asked her if she wanted me to put the Speaker of the House on speakerphone and explain himself, but
So I haven't contacted him because now I'm a senator, you know, so I go to the president of the Senate. And he's a good guy. I believe he's a good guy. He's just, one of the drawbacks of having a citizen legislature is that we all go home and try to work for a living, with the exception of me, who hasn't ridden a horse now in over a year, because I'm so consumed in politics, okay? But he does. He works very hard. I was in Kalispell the other night, and he was catering 6 events that night. So he is truly very busy. But he has promised to call me this week. Now, when was I at the Cyber Symposium? It was 3 weeks ago, I think. Yeah, 3 weeks at least. It's given me enough time to write this letter and gather 60 supporters, over 60 supporters. So at this point, like I said, it doesn't matter much if they support us or not. We're going ahead. And to not support us, they do so at their own peril, basically, is what it amounts to, because we will be shining the spotlight on this issue. And we do have some very solid conservative legislators who are willing to step in the fray. And I mean, people's lives are at stake over this.
Jacobson did order the county clerks to unplug those machines, right? That was an order to unplug the machines.
Yeah.
What we need, and this isn't a question, it's just me talking to Teresa, we need to take every one of those machines and throw them in the dumpster.
Yes.
I was told by the Richland County clerk that they don't have the power, the manpower to count those votes. I explained to them Montana has had a population drain, and Richland County had twice as many people in 1950 than in 2010. And you know what? They didn't have any voting machines, and they got all the votes counted. So don't give me that crap. Learn to count, and we don't need the machines at all. They're not necessary.
Another interesting fun fact that you guys will key in on is that, and this was pointed out to me by a woman in Kalispell who's one of the election integrity members up there and a staunch conservative. Interestingly enough, where the suspected irregularities are, those are the same counties that are ICLEI counties, the Agenda 21 counties. So that's quite interesting. I don't think that's by coincidence.
Other questions?
How about comment? Pastor?
Yep.
We heard about your incident in Helena weeks ago. In fact, I think it was at your, Teresa posted it, and we saw it here. It's not just the truckers that have boycotted.
Yay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. I have had hundreds, literally, of people tell me that they have stopped doing business at Town Pump because of that incident. I believe in repentance, which is why we wanted to give them an opportunity to do so. But there's also a lot of owner-operators and then just regular people like me that go to buy fuel. And here's the difference. I went to a holiday station in Billings. A guy trying to act like a woman came on the screen, told me it was my moral responsibility to accept him as a woman. So I go into the store, I wait in line, I didn't need anything, and I said, hey, it's not your fault, I know, but when you talk to your corporate office, you tell them I came here to buy fuel, and then you have some tranny come on the screen to tell me it's my moral obligation to lie about his gender. I did not come here to be socially engineered, I came here to fill up my gas tank. Thanks, bye. I was followed out by 3 men. I immediately go to code red. Like, how many people am I going to have to shoot today? They all wanted to shake my hand and say, thank you. We were thinking the same thing. But here's the thing. If you choose to boycott, it doesn't do nearly as much good unless you send them a letter why. I do know, because I've heard from dozens of people who called down there, they're very nasty on the phone with you. They won't talk about it. But even a phone call, at least they can report, we're hearing from customers about this. But when I get ready to call for a boycott, it's going to go from 3 million to many, 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 many more millions of dollars. But thank you, sir, for doing that for me. I appreciate it. Another question from anyone? Yes.
Are there other affiliates besides the Holiday and Town Pump? Somebody said Flying J. Just because we're boycotting.
Flying J, I was banned from Flying J as well, which must be owned by Town Pump.
It is.
Apparently.
Their signage
Holiday is
says
owned by
Town
Town
Pump.
Pump?
Good for the list.
Oh, okay. So I stopped by my county prosecutor's office and the sheriff because they said in the letter that they were going to send it to every prosecutor and law enforcement officer in the state. So I go to my jail Bible study on Monday nights. I don't want to. Usually you get a criminal trespass orders because you're like masturbating in the bathroom or shoplifting or something. So I go talk to the sheriff and I say, hey, I called the guy I got. That's what I did wrong, and I intend to follow their order. I went to the prosecutor. Her name's Janet. I helped get her elected. I know her well. I said, Janet, I called the guy I got. That's what I did wrong. All right? I thought about it for a few weeks, and I realized how hard it is to travel across Montana without stopping at a town pump. It's very difficult. So I went back to Janet's office the other day, and I said, Janet, I know I said I was going to follow their order, but I'm pretty well going to break it whenever I want to. I don't want to give them money, but if my 11-year-old daughter has to go to the bathroom, I'm not making her use the bushes. So what's the maximum penalty? She says, well, let me look up. $500? or 6 months in jail. And she said, you're not going to get put in jail for that. And she said, and if it happens in Richland County, I'm not prosecuting you for that. You still have to worry about elsewhere in the state. Last night was the first night. Are we still recording?
Yes.
Screw it, I don't care. Last night was the first night I went to Town Pump. And it's because it was the closest to the Ten Commandments monument camp up there in Kalispell where I stayed. And I thought, I'm breaking the law right now. Or their rule. I'm breaking their rule right now. And then I thought, I think my wife gave me a COVID mask. Prove it, suckers! I got a use for a mask now. So if I have to stop at Town Pump, I will. I will if I have to.
Jordan, I have to tell you, I'm breaking this rule. I continue to use Town Pump to use the bathroom.
They deserve nothing better.
I go in and I get a diet deal and use my credit card. So everything I spend goes to the credit card company.
Oh, right. Instead of Town Pump. I'm not a big boycott guy. I'm not a huge. To me, it's simple enough. They're a Montana company. They're Montana owned and operated. I'm a Montanan. We ought to be able to settle this with a conversation. But if not, that's what lawyers are for. And so I need a few of those, which again is why they had to say. Another question. Anyone else have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I have a question for Lee. I know that most of the people here are probably 40-ish and older.
Yeah.
And I know that it's important to get our youth involved, especially during this time, like what we're going through now. My question to you is, what is the percentage of youth are part of your society?
Nowhere near enough. I don't necessarily blame it on anyone. It's part of being young. My own kids who went through this communist revolution still say, Mom, I don't want to know about this. I don't want to hear about this. I just want to live a happy life. I don't want to be brought down by this news. So another issue is, if you recall when you were raising kids, did you have time for anything else? You're solely focused on raising your kids. That's for some reason the reason of the age of the people that are here too. So I don't blame them. I just think anybody who can do anything needs to get involved. But it is our duty to educate them and provide them with the knowledge that they need to know so that when the time comes, they will go to battle. One really important thing that happened to me in my life was when I was homeschooling my kids and they were still pretty young. This was late 1990s. I was at a homeschool conference, and there was a gentleman there, and he was talking about the book called The Fourth Turning. Any of you read The Fourth Turning? Excellent book. I would highly recommend it. And it was written in the early 1990s, and it talks about every fourth generation, or every 80 to 100 years, you go through the cycle of a crisis. And they went back to 1200, and they looked at all the crises that have happened for the Anglo-Saxon culture. And sure enough, every 80 to 100 years, there's a culture. So they named each of the generations, those 4 generations, names. And once you go through a crisis and you start to come back out of it again, that generation is called the hero generation. So they projected it out and said by 2000, this was in 1990, they projected it out and it said in 2010 we'll begin the next crisis in the Anglo-Saxon culture. And the generation that will save us is the hero generation. And it come to find out that at that homeschool conference, they said, it's your kids. It's your kids that will be the hero generation. They don't know it yet, but we are begging you to raise statesmen because these young people will be our hero generation, young man sitting right here.
Yes.
You don't know it, but you are part of that generation. I don't think that they will rise until they are forced to. I think most of us are not rising up until we're forced to.
He started a chapter of turning point.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very few are willing to do that right now. But they'll come around. They will come around. And when it's their time, they will rise up. But it is our duty right now to provide the education and the knowledge.
What about the curriculum, JBS's curriculum, homeschool curriculum?
Yes, that's another solution. When JBS gives you a problem, they don't not give you the solution. They only give you a problem, if they give you a problem, they give you the solution also. Years ago, it was determined that we needed to be working on the youth. And so we started Freedom Academy. Freedom Academy? I'm trying to, there's a word missing. Freedom Project Academy, and your child has signed up for it. Thank you. Freedom Project Academy. I highly recommend, if you will look out an app on your phone, Freedom Project Media. Dr. Duke Pesta is the director of this homeschool curriculum, and he does a media project. Every single day you get updates. He has a phenomenal show called The Dr. Duke Show, and he shows and tells everything that's wrong with the education system. But he also teaches things. He takes classic books and takes a little 3-minute segment and teaches you gems about some of the classic books that have all been thrown out of education. So that's a solution, is if you know people who want to homeschool and they don't know how and they don't have the means for being able to do it, our homeschool curriculum provides teachers that are online for people to help them with homeschooling.
Yes.
I didn't know that Freedom Project Academy was John Birch related until I went to Redfield and everybody was like, that's Alex Newman, we gotta see Alex Newman, we gotta see Alex Newman. And my daughter who was with me said, that's my economics teacher. And so if you get a chance to do that, it is worth every dime. That's the one good thing to come out of COVID. People have figured out, hey, I can educate my own children.
Homeschooling has doubled.
Homeschooling, and by the way, not all kids are the same. I have a son who has a learning disability, not in his head, but in his mouth. He has to be educated by his mother, because he can't talk. I have a daughter younger than her that I just don't think is ready for any type of school. I've got kids in the middle that go to the Christian school who don't allow any garbage whatsoever, and my older children go to Freedom Project Academy. So there's lots of options, computer-based, non-computer-based, but get your kids out of public school.
We published 2 of our New American magazines. Please pick up one of each of them. One of them is called Save Our Children, and the other one is called Rescuing Our Children. This is a 2nd edition because it's been so popular. If you know of children, have children or grandchildren, please read these and help to save and rescue our children. There are solutions and options for that. So please, everybody take one of these. There's also one of these DVDs called Overview of America. Please, it's my gift, take it home. It's the best 30-minute civics lessons that you will ever have. And you need to show it to your kids, to your teenagers, to your neighbors, to your friends. Everyone you know needs to see this 30-minute video. Best you'll ever see. Can I mention a couple of things? I want to talk about a couple of actions. Please don't run away yet. We'll be done, I promise you, in 5 minutes.
Don't run off!
Yeah. I wanted to talk about a couple of things. I mentioned the do not call for a constitutional convention. The solution is, and Teresa knows this very well, it's called nullification. That's what the states can do. When a law is mandated or passed by the federal government, and it is not constitutional, it is the duty of the states to nullify it. To nullify means it doesn't exist. If it isn't constitutional, it doesn't exist, and the states do not need to comply. What we need to do again is to build the backbone of our representatives so that the representatives start to be able to say to the federal government, you don't have the authority, you weren't granted it, you don't have the right, and we don't have to listen, and we're not going to do it.
Amen.
That is one of the biggest solutions. That's something that the Constitution allows us and grants us to do right now. We need to remind our state legislators that it was the states that existed first. The states created the federal government and gave them few and enumerated powers that they put into the Constitution. And the 10th Amendment, what does the 10th Amendment say? It says if it isn't listed in there, you can't do it. It is to remain amongst the states and amongst the people. Apparently our legislators have forgotten that. One of the things that we do, again at the Birch Society, we offer, yes.
let me add this real quick. When the feds are told, we're not doing what you tell us, the feds say, well, then we aren't giving you our money. The only solution, because they know that we don't have to do it. The only solution to that is a smaller government.
That's right, yeah.
And what is the one thing that we can hold our federal representatives to? What is the oath that they swore to uphold? The Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, right? They swore that to God. Can we hold them accountable to that? Yes. So I don't know of any other organizations who do this, and the Birch Society has done this for years. It's called the Freedom Index. We rate them based on constitutionality. It's the only thing we can rate them on. Now the Democrats really, sorry, my French, suck at this. They score generally between 0 and 20% on constitutionality. The Republicans are way better. They score between 40 and 60% constitutionality. Now, I love this from Robert Brown, a good friend of both of ours. Robert Brown always said, so when you get married, you swear an oath of fidelity to your partner, right? To your spouse. So what would you say if you went to your spouse and said, I was faithful 60% of the time, what's the problem? Why are we letting them get away with this? Because you know what? We don't know what they're doing. So the Birch Society scores each one of their votes on how constitutional was that constitutional or was that not constitutional. Let me tell you a story that I did with this Freedom Index. The power of one person with a tool. I was living in northern Idaho, and the campaign for District 1 was happening. This was about 12 years ago. Raul Labrador was running for Congress this was northern Idaho, your neighbor's right over there. And he was running for office, and when they're running for office, they're still somewhat humble. And he would come around, and I'd meet with him every single time, and I'd say, Raul, what do you think about free trade? And he said, I think it's a good idea. I said, wrong answer. And he said, what do I not know? Well, here's a DVD, here's a pamphlet, here's a booklet, here's a this and this, go study up on it. Okay. And he'd go study. And he'd come back and I'd say, what do you think about sound money? He'd say, I don't really know anything about sound money. Great! Here's a DVD, here's a reprint, here's a magazine, here's a book, go read up on it. Okay. Finally I said, Raul, I believe in you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to help you in your election. But we have this thing called the Freedom Index. And if you win, we're actually going to be watching what you do. And he said, okay, I hear you. So he went off to D.C., and I'm crossing my fingers. Something happens when they go to the Viper Pit. Yeah. And the first Freedom Index came out, and I thought, oh, good, let's see how he did. And I look it up, Raul Labrador. Holy smokes, 96% constitutionality. He's in like the top 2% of all the representatives. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to use this as a tool. So everywhere he went in his town halls, I followed him with hundreds of this Freedom Index. And I laid it on every person's seat. And during the meeting, he was calling on people, and I raised my hand and I said, I want you all to know, please look at this Freedom Index. Our representative is scoring in the top 1% of all 535 representatives as one of the very few. By the way, there's generally only about 5 who score in the top 90, who score in the 90th percentile. Only 5 out of 535 are scoring in the top in the 90th percentile. And so everybody applauds him. They all leave, and I say, Raul, you see what I'm doing with this? He says, yeah. I said, I helped you into office, right? He says, yeah. I said, I'm keeping you in office, right? He says, yeah. I said, when those numbers start going down? He says, yeah. I'm going to help you right out of office. That's the power of one tool and one person. So we provide the tools for you to help you go out and fight this battle. Our motto is, education is our strategy. Truth is our only weapon. That's what we fight with. We fight with the truth. That's what you're doing with your publication, fighting with the truth. We need more people to help reveal the truth and use these tools. If you join as a member of the Birch Society, you get 24 issues of the New American Magazine. This is where these people were gaining the wisdom that I wanted, is from these New American Magazine. We give you, again, not only the information, but we give you the action plan. Once a month, we give you a bulletin that tells you what the action is that you can take this month, either together as a local chapter or as individual members. But we give you the action plan. We show you every month new tools that we've provided for you, new booklets, new reprints, new DVDs, all kinds of information to help you educate yourself and help educate other people. And then finally, I'm sorry to let you guys finish whatever way, I have a gift for you that it was actually not a gift from me, but I received a very generous donation from someone who has allowed me to give a gift to all of you. If you're interested in joining in this epic battle and using the tools that we provide for you, and you would like to join tonight, only tonight before you leave, I have a very special gift for you, and it's this whole package. It includes one of our magazines, the DVD that I just mentioned that is the best civics lesson you'll ever have, a Constitution book, 3 booklets on constitutional principles, and my absolute favorite, how many of you have heard of the book The Law by Frederick Bastiat? One of the best books I have ever read in my life. This is the only book that I have ever read 14 times. I don't know why, but every time I read it, there's something new in there that wasn't in there the last time that I read it. It is an incredible book. This alone, I think, it goes for $8. So I would love to give all of you this whole gift of everything if you would like to join us tonight with the Birch Society, and we have membership forms up here. One other thing I wanted to share about, I almost forgot. One of the action projects that we're working on in the Birch Society, at least locally, was about Sheriff Mack. How many of you know Sheriff Mack? Amazing man who is training up constitutional sheriffs. So we had an idea. Sheriff Mack was speaking in Rapid City a couple of times, and he was telling us about constitutional counties. This is a fairly new idea, and it is where the sheriff, the county commissioners, and any other elected officials declare their county a constitutional county. What a thought. All of them swore to uphold the Constitution, right? So why is this a new thought? But when I heard it, I thought, this is brilliant. This is exciting. I can get excited about this. So our Broadus, Montana chapter said, we're going to host him. We're going to invite all the elected officials from half of Montana to come to Broadus, Montana. Y'all know it's way out there. And they're going to invite them and get them all there. And then I thought, no, wait, let's make this better. What if we create a swath of 3 states of constitutional counties? So we're doing it in Rapid City one day, Broadus, Montana the next day, and Gillette, Wyoming the next day. And we're going to attempt to get half of 3 states to create this huge swath of constitutional counties. Because in the end, this is the last stand, people. The last stand before what she's talking about, that we all don't want to have it go there. This is the last stand that we have. We need to remind our elected officials that their duty is to protect our God-given rights. That is the #1 duty that they have. And Sheriff Mack is the one who will educate them on that. This is the last stand. So perhaps this is something that you can organize on this side of the state. I'll be happy to help you figure out how we're doing that. But that's another project that we're working on.
I just want to add this as the obnoxious preacher. The concept of the constitutional county is not new. It has only been rediscovered. It is actually called the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. It is a theological doctrine that goes back to the Protestant Reformation and beyond. I would say so far back as Augustine and Aquinas. Its roots are in the Holy Scripture, and it basically is this. If you take an oath of office to God, you are held ultimately accountable to the people who elected you, not the person above you. So when the federal government tells the sheriff, do this, he says, I was elected by the people, not by you. That's all it is. And so it's been rediscovered. I just wanted to add that from a theological perspective. The book on that is The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate by Matt Trehala. Read it, buy it on YouTube if you can find it. We want to open it up to 2 more questions. That's it. And then we're getting out of here, going home after
Okay, I just got a text. A friend of mine was told that she's not fully vaccinated. By 11/22, she's fired. I sent her the article you gave me today. She works for the Forest Service down here. What would you recommend?
They're going to fire her?
That's what they told her.
Well,
If she's not fully vaxxed by November 22nd, she's fired.
Can she
submit a religious exception?
I don't know.
Okay,
They are available.
Okay.
Religious exemptions are available. If the Forest Service will accept it, we don't know.
I spoke to 12 pastors today who, starting Monday, are putting together a religious exemption that we're going to put out nationwide that they can use from 12 different denominations, myself included. And it's going to be the only shot that she has, I'd say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other than that, here's what's going to happen. Biden, I might have said it already, I don't know. Corporations run America, not the government. Corporations run the government. So when Biden made that announcement, everyone with a brain, including, I don't know if he had a brain, but everyone with a brain knew that the courts are going to shut that down. Even the liberal court would shut down his ordinance. Trust me, even the liberal courts are going to be like, you can't do that, moron, you can't do that.
Right.
But the corporatocracy and the federal government is going to move lightning fast to enforce his orders before the courts can intervene. So, my advice is do not quit. Get fired.
Yes.
Then you class action their butt. That's what you do. So make her, and first of all, if she needs a religious exemption, that's what I do. Been ordained 22 years, give her one of my cards, tell her to call me. She won't reach me on my card, she'll reach my secretary. We'll get her a religious exemption. If they don't like that, then I don't know what the solution is.
I think the article that I sent was one from Liberty Council. I think
Liberty Council, great people. Richard Mast down at Liberty Council. I work with him on some things. I know Teresa's been working with Richard Mast. They're fine humans down there. Let's have one more question, and then if you have a question, you can talk to us speakers down in the, what do you call it? The arena. In the pit. One last question.
Actually, it was just a comment that America's Frontline Doctors, they have several template letters for religious exemptions, depending on if you're an Old Testament Jew, a New Testament Christian, or whatever we have kind of ready.
What we talked about today is, I can think of 100 verses that we could use, and it was important to me not to twist the scripture to do that. And so I know that those are out there, but I've seen some of them, and I'm like, it's a little scripture twisty. So I don't know her religious beliefs, but if she's an evangelical Christian, wait a few days, and I'll have one.
She is. Okay, sounds great.
I'll have one. That was a comment, one question, then we're done. Any other questions?
If there's no question, I discovered a series, it's called Biblical Citizenship in Modern America, put out by Wall Builders. And I'm looking at doing a home group at it. It's 8 DVDs. I don't know if you're familiar with Wall Builders or not, but it's fabulous. I've gone through 4 of the DVDs so far.
Marcia May.
But it's Biblical Citizenship in Modern America, and it was a lot about what you talked about tonight.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. God bless.
Thank you so much. You know, I've been passing these books around, and I brought them to give you a visual aid, a visual tool. And so somehow we went from the Constitution, which controls the government, right, which was designed to control the government. I want you to be aware that that is your Montana Code annotated, the blue, the turquoise there. That's all the laws of Montana with the exception of Title 13, which I have in the House. That's the election law. And then I want to draw your attention to these 4 binders. That is administrative rules for 3 of the 32 agencies, land-related agencies. And then this gray binder, that's a portion of the rules for DPHHS and CPS. And that's DPHHS uses more than 40% of our budget. That's all the social justice, all the welfare programs, that's all in there. That's all administrative rules there. And then this baby right here with the yellow paper, House Bill 2, that's the budget. So I just wanted you to have that visual and opportunity to see what we've become. Too many rules, yes. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you for your attention and your generous contribution. Appreciate you all very, very much. God bless.
I don't know.
You're welcome. Oh, well, if you wanted to pick up some chairs, they can get stacked over there by the,
To the left of the door?
to the, see where the,
Take one.
appreciate you very much. Okay. Let's see. Oh, wow. Oh, hi.
Oh my goodness, I heard that puppy. It's like, I need a puppy.
Is it a bat? You can't. Hello, hello. Okay, okay, I have to do some writing here.
Sorry. I did Amber's bat.
Yeah. How's it?
R-A-E-N-A.
May I have your...
Yes, 46203. You got it from it. 2954. Yes.
They closed the window, so he probably has a home here somewhere, but there he goes. He's just a little bat. He won't eat much.
I think they're cool. I like that.
Yeah, I like those great big huge ones.
No, those are really cool.
I mean, they're cool to look at. I don't really want to as a pet. Yeah, yeah. Okay, he picked up.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Appreciate it. Nice meeting you. Okay.